The first Distant Lands special named after its starring character BMO has launched.
Oof. Looks like I'm gonna need a deputy.
Visually, Distant Lands is a mild artistic revamp of classic Adventure Time, with sleeker designs that feel smoother around the edges. There's also more detail to the backgrounds than we've ever had before, along with richer colors and more dynamic shading. In general, the look feels new, yet familiar, which is definitely what the creators were aiming for, and it took me far less time than I expected to become acclimatized to the show's new appearance. When we first got summaries for the 4 Distant Lands specials, BMO was the one I was most apprehensive about, because in addition to relying on characters introduced to the series for the first time, I wasn't sure how well the cute lovable robot could hold 45 minutes of runtime. I've certainly loved some episodes focusing on the misadventures of BMO, such as BMO Lost and Football, which were laugh-out-loud fun the entire way through. Wacky hijinks aside, BMO has shown to be a character capable of carrying heavy emotional sentiment, such as in the episode The More You Mow, The Mo You Know. BMO has also been the catalyst for emotional upwelling in other characters, such as in the episode Ketchup, where his childlike imagination led to something magical in a manner that no other character could achieve. So obviously, it's not like lighthearted humor is all BMO has to offer, but at the end of the day, I think my personal favorite BMO-based piece of Adventure Time entertainment was the 3-minute short, All's Well That Rats Well.
Forever young.
Which reinforces the notion that I tend to enjoy BMO the most in brief bursts. Personally, I've always thought BMO works best as a supporting character that adds further comedy to an already existing scenario with his unique blend of gung-ho attitude and naivete. This Distant Lands special definitely tries to play at that angle quite a bit. I'd argue that Y5 is more the protagonist of this special than BMO is, despite the title. This was Y5's coming-of-age story after all, and unlike BMO, she has an actual character arc. By the end of the episode, Y5 changes as a person, overhauls the relationship with her parents, and becomes a prominent figure in her community by rallying them all together under a unifying cause. BMO, meanwhile, just basks in the satisfaction of a job well done.
Yep, it's time for this sheriff to move on.
Heck, at times, BMO nearly feels like this force of nature that just blows through and inspires others in the process.
BMO has a mission.
While it can be argued BMO plays the support role for a story that was already unfolding when he arrived, he's still very prominently featured throughout the duration of the special, and unfortunately I did get a bit burnt out with his shtick before the special concluded. One of my criticisms of the special would indeed be that BMO wasn't a compelling enough hero figure for the amount of screen time he receives. Also, a lot of the BMO-based jokes did not land with me. Comedy is obviously quite subjective, so I'm curious whether I'm in the minority with this sentiment. Here's a few examples of jokes that I just didn't find that funny.
A secret lab is just how I've always pictured it for the last 2 minutes. A little blue and green planet called BMO World.
Behold, the Unity Pod.
Oh, I thought it was a popcorn maker.
Because BMO tends to be a fairly superficial character most of the time, I feel that his humor resonating with a viewer is way more important than for a lot of other Adventure Time characters, and unfortunately I felt that a lot of attempts failed to hit the mark, or felt a tad on the repetitive side. That's not to say I never laughed, because I definitely did at certain moments.
He died as he lived, sucking big time.
The follow-up gag was also great.
BMO, that was incredible! You single-handedly saved everyone!
But on the whole, the humor just wasn't up to my personal standard. Overall, I did enjoy my time with this special, but I wasn't deeply moved or highly enthralled. There wasn't this excitement rising up in my chest at any point. The experience was more of a laid-back, casual sort of fun. As far as Adventure Time goes, I'd say it was okay. If you're one of those people who much prefers the early seasons to the later half of the series, then you'd probably get more mileage out of the special than I did. Now, there were plenty of interesting lore details and creative choices in BMO, but most of these were secondary to the main narrative, so at times the background material eclipsed the actual story, which results in this dissonance in regards to where your attention wants to go. Basically, I'm saying that all the awesome Easter eggs incorporated into the special were more interesting than the core plot. A plot that I also have to say was very by the numbers, despite the whimsical space setting everything takes place in. And that's my biggest criticism of the BMO special. When you strip away the references and visuals, the underlying story is on the weak side, and lacks the imaginative flair and/or subversion that I associate with Adventure Time. With that general assessment out of the way, let's talk about some key scenes, details, and those aforementioned Easter eggs. Well, first, let me quickly mention something that wasn't there. Was anyone else expecting the classic opening theme song, but with new animation for each special? The sword reflecting our beloved characters was pretty cool, and seeing BMO's innards and chubby CGI was also a neat intro visual, but damn it, a part of me kept waiting for that opening tune to kick in, and it never did. I was also really hoping we'd get a new luxurious title card, but alas. It's obviously not a big deal at all, and lacking the classic intro does serve to further separate Distant Lands from the original seasons of the show, but these specials appear to be heavily tied into the lore of the original series. Based on this first special, Distant Lands doesn't really work as standalone material in my opinion. I would never recommend for someone who has never seen Adventure Time to go watch the BMO special, because they would be missing out on so many connections and callbacks that elevate the experience. One such callback is football. Originally, I thought the drawing in the cockpit was all we would get, but football straight up makes multiple appearances throughout the special.
You always have me, BMO. Yes, football, but I meant new, interesting people.
Oof, damn, BMO is savage when he wants to be. So, the entire reason BMO is in a space shuttle is because Mo presumably tasked BMO with the mission to try and terraform Mars with potatoes. That is a MoCo-branded spacecraft that BMO's flying in, after all. I guess it's possible BMO set out on this venture of his own accord, but the Lonely Cowboy lyrics make me think BMO's carrying this task out at Mo's request.
I have left my dream of grand adventure for the quiet of my Martian tater farm.
Also, Mo has already been hinted to have a relationship of some form with Mars. He's been shown alongside schematic drawings of the Martian dome. It's neat that the whole Mo-Mars relationship is indirectly brought up in this special, although the nature of that relationship remains vague and pretty much unknown. Since I was flying under the assumption that Mo asked BMO to carry out this mission, thus implying that Mo is alive, my mind immediately went to asking the question of when are these events taking place? We don't get the general time frame until a certain character shows up later, and of course there's that stinger at the end, but a clue that this special might be a prequel is right there at the start. I thought that was really cool. So when we first meet Y5, she's observing a bugbot on a rock.
Its attempts are pitiful, but I am sworn not to interfere.
Originally, I viewed this scene from a zoological-based perspective, where if you're observing animals or doing a behavioral study, you don't want to interfere with the subjects you're observing. Ideally, you don't even want them to be aware of your presence. And that is a valid way to look at the scene, as well as the following one, because they do establish Y5 as an aspiring scientist.
Stink sacks!
Such a rare and majestic sight.
However, after you watch the whole special, it also becomes apparent that these scenes serve as meta-level foreshadowing to the central themes and morals of this special, which are not being a passive observer, not just going with the flow, but instead being an active participant in the events happening around you. This special is very politically charged. It's one thing I really appreciate about it. On the Drift, the select few in charge are looking out for themselves while exploiting the workers beneath them and keeping them in line with a slew of propaganda, exemplified by the absurd amount of pro-Hugo imagery in every sector. Hugo claims to be working for the common good, but with no transparency, there's no way to hold him accountable. People just blindly follow the desires of the demagogue Hugo and his entourage, while further degrading the Drift's capabilities to be a self-sustaining system. There's also very apparent allusions to global warming and misuse of resources for the benefit of the wealthy elite, who in the end will fuck you over to get theirs. So while these early scenes establish Y5 as science-minded, they also demonstrate how, before BMO arrived, she's been a passive observer who has not yet started to fight the system to benefit the common good. In retrospect, the scene before we see Y5 for the first time also foreshadows these themes that are to come in a playful manner.
Olive, you interfere with my mission! Okay, I changed my mind. You can interfere, Olive!
When where you live is being destroyed for the benefit of the few, you have to interfere. You have to be active, involved, and informed in shaping your own future. It's very much a call to grassroots organizing. As such, it's quite poignant that the cascade of events that led to Y5 going against the grain and changing her society kicked off with her decision to become involved. BMO didn't crash into her life, she chose to get involved with BMO by rescuing him, even if she ended up regretting it shortly after.
Ugh, why did I interfere? Oh, stupid!
Okay, so the Market Plaza during Y5's chase sequence features multiple entities we've seen before. There's the same aliens as good old Cuber. It's not Cuber himself, since his hat is different, and the geometric design of the hat seems to be the most straightforward way to differentiate these beings. There's a Mantis alien, similar to what we saw in the episode High Strangeness. And is that Warren Ampersand? What are you doing here? There's a Voidcaster, although it's not the same individual as the one we saw in Escape from the Citadel, which was much larger and a different color.
Hey, you're a Voidcaster, right? We gotta put some gas in this buggy.
It does reveal why Martin was familiar with Voidcasters, though, since they were among the aliens residing on the Drift. And yes, I got a little ahead of myself there in regards to the topic of Martin Mertens, Finn's father. I thought maybe we would see a brief cameo appearance from him. I did not think he would be this heavily incorporated into the special, and I loved it. As soon as I heard his voice,
Well, where's the transmogger?
I was 99% sure it was him. The tiny amount of lingering doubt was because I thought they might simply be using the same voice actor for an unrelated character, but why cover the face up and psych fans out this way? It would be so unnecessary and in bad taste if they covered up the character's appearance and gave him the same voice as Martin, only for him to end up being an unrelated new character. However, the special just continues to throw more and more evidence right at your face that this is Martin. It just piles it on. His name being Mr. M, his physique, the reference to his love of flashy gadgets.
Yes. The Hugo mats were Mr. M's idea.
Hugo.
That boy loves flashy gadgets.
We understand that you like gadgets?
I do like them.
Hello.
I don't like it. I love it!
The color of his skin matching that of Martin's, his scamming, his burning of bridges.
Oh! Very unfortunate.
He even says the exact same phrase he's used multiple times before in the series.
Well, here comes the rascal.
Here comes the rascal!
So despite us never getting to see the man's face, a creative choice I really appreciate, this is, without any shred of doubt, the Martin Mertens well into the scumbag phase of his life. Moving on to other interesting details and references, BMO calls a space lord Ricky.
You will repay me by caring for him and keeping him safe forever. Also, his name is Ricky!
Which is the same name he gives to that baby in the episode BMO lost.
Potato. Eat your potato, Ricky.
The potato thing is pretty funny considering that the start of this special was also laden with potatoes.
Potatoes, potatoes, buy my fresh potatoes.
So before Distant Lands was announced, it was disguised as codename Rumblejaw, a fake creative project to distract us from Adventure Time coming back. One fun Easter egg is you can actually see this show playing on a TV in the rabbit dwellings. So the fake show created as a cover to hide the fact that Adventure Time was returning is a real show in the Adventure Time universe. By the way, these rabbit beings, we've actually seen them in Adventure Time before. In the episode Fiona and Cake and Fiona, the old lady costuming as Fiona seems to be one of these rabbit people. So who knows if these originate from Earth or elsewhere, but like a lot of other alien beings, they all ended up in the Drift living semi-communally together.
Buy my eggs! Buy my eggs! Or I swear to God I'll eat them myself!
Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling. Tossed salads and scrambled eggs. Oh my.
I think I know this song.
Huh, I guess BMO has watched Frasier. Speaking of things from Earth ending up in space, Card Wars is intergalactic. I found this quite comical. Imagine if in real life there were extraterrestrials out there playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In the depths of space. Earlier in this review, I mentioned how a lot of BMO's one-liners didn't quite work for me comedically, but there was definitely still some great dialogue to be had.
I'm your huckleberry.
That's one example. I literally placed my hand over my heart in response to hearing that line. It was great. I also mentioned how pretty the background design is now, and this is one example. Just look at these colors. They are so... mwah. So I guess when BMO threatens football in the episode Football...
You are going to the dirt hole, football! Dirt hole! No!
I guess maybe the dirt hole wasn't purely figurative. Maybe this is the dirt hole BMO is referencing.
You are in the dirt hole now. Dirt hole! Ah! Run, BMO!
The scene where BMO gets ripped apart was pretty intense.
I think I'm dying.
We all knew BMO would end up okay, even if you hadn't yet realized this special was a prequel, so it's not like I had dread in my gut or anything, but the visual depiction of BMO dying was still really well done. Seeing the color-coded manifestations of BMO's mind again was neat, although obviously it will never quite feel as impactful as the first time. The rainbow assortment of BMOs also don't ruminate on anything as profound as back in The More You Mow, The Mo You Know, but they serve as a nice foil for BMO's unwavering willpower.
No, BMO always bounces back.
I know that structurally this joke was similar to a joke we already had earlier in the special, but I laughed just as hard as I did the first time. The dark humor mixed with the impeccable comedic timing is just really good. I'm a sucker for this type of joke. I haven't talked about Y5 all that much in this review, but there's just not that much to say about her journey that isn't already immediately apparent. She's a very straightforward character with basic story beats. If you called her character arc cliched, I wouldn't argue with you. Like, she's not a bad character or anything, but she is very conventional in a series where prominent characters are often not. Y5's parents take the cake though when it comes to being cookie-cutter characters. There's just not that much to them beyond the functions they play in Y5's character arc. They've always been parents who dismissed their child who's too meek to stand up to them until they comprehend the error of their ways and see Y5 for who she really is, and at the end they accept her by using the name she chose for herself. Her parents just don't stand on their own. They're there so her journey can unfold in the direction I think we all saw coming from light years away.
Kids, right? Always calling out their deadbeat parents.
What?
What?
So there's just not much to analyze there. So now I'm gonna get back to talking about lore details. Hugo drops a bunch in the exposition dump of how Hugo came to the Drift, something she's knowledgeable about because Hugo created GoBots as janky knockoffs of Mobots. Although I personally would never call Hugo janky, she seems pretty capable and very well adjusted for a robot in her situation and with her history. David Ferguson got to animate Hugo's exposition. He was the one who animated Water Park Prank, an episode I generally pretend doesn't exist. But I think his style works much better here in flashback form, rather than being applied toward an entire episode. This does make me wonder whether all 4 Distant Land specials will have segments created by guest animators that have previously graced the series. That would be pretty cool. Anyway, lore stuff. From Hugo's story, I got the impression that Hugo and company must be hundreds of years old, if not slightly over 1,000, since they left Earth as a response to the apocalyptic aftermath of the Mushroom War. Which does raise the question of how many years did they careen through space for, and how many years back did they first arrive on the Drift? For the timeline to make sense, I got the impression that they were lost in space for a substantial amount of time. It's interesting how 2 mushroom bomb explosions were depicted. If my memory serves right, we've only seen images of the 1 mushroom bomb up to this point. It's been implied there was nuclear fallout on a grand scale, but the mushroom bomb specifically has been a singular unique weapon on a mutagenic level different from your standard nukes. It's almost been this mythical weapon, so it's intriguing that there was more than one set off. Also, the mushroom bomb did not create the massive crater on planet Earth. Some other distinct event caused that. More questions than answers. That's Adventure Time for you. Hugo's space shuttle happened to run into gray aliens like the ones we saw in the episode High Strangeness, although obviously not the same ones, since these all died. These gray aliens seem to get the short end of the stick in Adventure Time. Princess Bubblegum nearly wiped out a spacecraft of them when she accidentally hit them with her rocket, which led to the candy matter she was trying to see to other planets, using the grays as biofuel to grow. Now we find out that earlier in time, some of these aliens helped Hugo and his troop become hybridized with alien DNA, transforming them into long-lived gray elves, as they call themselves, which led to the spread of contagious disease that wiped out all the kind-hearted Greys on this spacecraft. These little fellas are too friendly for their own good. We still don't know how Martin Mertens got off Earth and into space, because he clearly arrived to the drift independently of Hugo and crew, which launched their exodus like 1,000 years before Martin was born almost. And obviously Martin was never hybridized with grey alien DNA like the rest of the people traveling with Hugo. My theory is still that Martin got off Earth via the aliens that Tree Trunks banged. I talked about this in my Reign of Fire review if you want to check that out. And while I guess it's possible that Martin's cosmic crime that gets him sent to the Citadel was his meddling with the drift, this too remains completely unconfirmed. The dude could have done plenty of other bad shit to get his ass thrown into cosmic jail.
Get in the car.
So this special wraps up pretty much as expected. BMO is restored, and with the smooth data he comically copied earlier in the episode, Y5 is able to reveal Hugo's true intentions to all the denizens of the Drift, who join up to eject his parasitic ass into space. I have to say, I'm not too keen on villains in leadership positions who just admit to all the shady stuff they've done when called out on it. I feel like in real life, people will continue to deny and to lie to their very last breath despite all the evidence stacked against them, especially so when they've indoctrinated much of the population to root for them. Cartoon villains often tend to fold the moment they're exposed, which in turn makes the wrap-up phase very simple and clean. That being said, this special was about BMO never giving up, and Y5 finding her voice. It was not a thorough exploration of the Drift's socio-political climate, so it's fine. Not to mention, Hugo was getting ready to leave the Drift behind anyway, so admitting his villainous schemes as a final middle finger to the people he exploited makes total sense. Also, Hugo pulling a "I'm sorry if you were offended," but not even finishing that not-pology, that was pretty funny.
But if anyone was offended by my actions, I am truly.
Now what I didn't expect was for Olive to end up with Hugo at the end.
Oh, it's you. Still disappointed in me? Huh.
I don't think that technically qualifies as Olive forgiving Hugo, but there's like a level of acceptance here that threw me for a loop. I'm actually really curious how other people perceived this moment. Olive possibly extending an olive branch? Was that supposed to be an unspoken pun? To someone who was content with killing countless people. And my reading is that Hugo is down in the dumps here because his plan failed last minute, and he's free-floating through space. There was no indication at any point that he regrets his actions, or is even conflicted about them. Olive has the capability to warp-speed spacecrafts, as we saw at the start of this special, so is there like an implication here that Olive might possibly help out Hugo if he somehow works towards becoming a better person? I don't know, my thoughts are a mess in regards to this scene, which is why I'm really curious to see what other people thought.
Let's ride! Yeehaw!
I'd like to know how long BMO had to ride that space lard named Twinkletoes to arrive back at Earth. Getting lost in the vastness of space feels like it should be an existential nightmare, but Adventure Time doesn't treat navigating through space as all that difficult. It's actually always been absurdly convenient. It does make me think that if the Drift is hypothetically beyond saving, all the denizens could just simply ride space lards to other planets to resettle without much fuss. I mean, yeah, BMO's a robot, so he doesn't need air or food, but Martin already rode a space moth across the galaxy, so there's precedent for that. But let's move beyond the apparent ease of space travel in the Adventure Time world, and talk about that final scene. If you're familiar with the show's lore and timeline, Martin being in the special should have already given away when all these events were taking place, give or take about 5 years. So personally, this scene did not feel like a surprise for me at all, but it was still really fun. I always assumed BMO just randomly befriended Finn and Jake at some point in time, and yeah, that's totally what happened. Through random chance, BMO happened to crash land outside their treehouse, and the rest is history. I assume Joshua and Margaret must have already passed away for Finn and Jake to be living in the treehouse, and I gotta say, Finn came out rather well adjusted considering Jake took on the role of being his guardian at that young of an age. Jake seems to be in or near his Card Wars phase, and Glob forbid his JT Dog Zone phase, So the fact that Finn grew up into a pretty swell preteen, all things considered, is nothing short of amazing in my opinion. Or maybe I just severely underestimate Jake's tutelage. It still feels a bit weird to see new Adventure Time stuff when the series finale was such a thematically appropriate closer to the show, but I'm hopeful and eager for the rest of the Distant Lands specials. Thank you for listening to my thoughts, and please share yours in the comments. I will still be finishing off my Infinity Train Season 2 reviews on this channel. If you haven't yet seen Infinity Train, come on, do it! Do it now! However, before I get to the end of those reviews, I do plan to finalize that tarot-based stakes analysis video that's been in production for eons, so look forward to that as well. Alright, now I'm gonna go eat some potatoes.